All right, how's it going, my magnificent sons of bitches? And I've decided to come back today because I see a lot of stuff going on Twitter, some on YouTube, people talking about the Trump raid by the FBI, uh, state-backed propaganda, more than likely another psychological operation, some form of social engineering that's being put out there in the Twitterverse. Pretty much, it's all this fucking shit starts in the Twitterverse, and then it escalates and it goes down into YouTube. Sometimes it doesn't even make it to YouTube just because it's so fucking ridiculously stupid. So you got guys like Call for an Uprising and various other people. It's like this is going to be a civil war, and it's going to be the Republicans versus the Democrats. Okay, first off, that this isn't a scenario anymore. It's not a civil war type scenario. That contingency is already passed. You can't have a civil war between Democrats and everybody in the fucking country. There's just no sustainability for the left, for the Democrats, for the people in DC. There's just no possible fucking way that they could sustain a civil war, even if they had every institution. I mean, what are you looking at? The FBI is only 35,000 people strong. The CIA is 21,000. The ATF is like some 5,000 people strong. And then whenever you combine that with the mighty force of the military, and this is saying that none of these people would defect, which we already know, according to certain leakers and documents, that, it's, you know, not a surefire bet that you're even going to be able to maintain that 60,000 in the State Department, and be able to keep that 2.1 million people in all your military units together without any of them defecting. It wouldn't be pragmatic, to the degree of what they would defect. That remains to be seen, because we're not in a civil war type scenario. However, everybody's going to jump on board with it, particularly here on YouTube. They're going to embellish. They're going to fucking feed you shit just to get their own views up. Not really too much different going on here on YouTube as it is the mainstream media. So I really wanted to go ahead and drop this video for posterity purposes, because most of my videos that I do are for posterity purposes. And so whenever the shit continues this direction, you can't come back and say nobody was saying that. Nobody, how could anybody ever have known that this money would cause disinflation, or the gas would go up, or the prices of everything would go up, or oh, they would take advantage of people and implement mandates. They're never going to do that. And you hear this shit all the time from the laymen that pretend to be in a position of any kind of degree of fucking pragmatism, any kind of degree of fucking logic. We can see that that's not the case anymore. For you rational, sane people that'll call me a conspiracy theorist while you're double masking shit, wearing a goddamn visor over your face, thinking that the world is going to end all the time, calling me a conspiracy theorist and saying I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. Okay, it is what it is. I mean, you don't carry, you don't carry you don't carry that cloud anymore, where you could sit there and point your finger at me and say, oh, this guy's just absolutely crazy. You can't do that shit anymore. So I kind of wanted to go ahead and go in a real world scenario of what this means, what this all means, why they're doing it, and the real world possibilities of the people that are in charge that make these decisions for whatever fucking reason they're in charge. It doesn't matter what the outcomes will be. So just as in the case with your January 6th committee, in the case of the Alex Jones, this is nothing more than the State Department. This just shows desperation. And all of these events, whether it's the January 6th committee, the little fucking shills on Twitter saying, arrest Trump now! Arrest Trump now! January 6th! And calling people insurrectionists and traitors and all this other fucking shit. And their fucking cathartic fucking imbecilic brains that thinks that they don't seem like utter fucking sociopaths. This is meant to set a precedent of, okay, we're going to go ahead and draw the line here and say, okay, Alex Jones said something that Sandy Hook, which, to be honest with you, if you go ahead and break down the fucking Sandy Hook shit, it's already passed the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations for any civil case in Texas is 4 fucking years. It's fucking Sandy Hook happened in 2012. That's 10 fucking years ago. So none of this shit makes any fucking sense, to be honest with you. And looking at these kangaroo buffoonish courts and the reaction from the left being the reaction of the fucking left, it ultimately has pushed everybody further into one general direction, which is that far right, which is where we're kind of heading right now. Every fucking indication, it appears that it's going to be fucking a monumental fucking landslide. Red fucking wave. The Republicans are probably going to assume a lot of fucking control in 2022 and going into 2023. Almost in a scary amount of control because that's too far right. You know what I'm saying? And this is the problem with the current situation. This is the problem with having a centralized government is it constantly swings radically from one direction to the other. It never just contains here in the middle. This is the problem of having a centralized government and a two-party system and the polarization that we have in this fucking country. So, this, for the most part, all of these departments have lost a lot of credibility. And this looks like I said, with the January 6th, with the Alex Jones trial, with the Trump Mar-a-Lago raid, this is an act of desperation of people who understand that they're losing any kind of, power that they essentially had. They're losing confidence. Your power is only based solely on the confidence of the American people. It doesn't matter if you're in the FBI. It doesn't matter if you're in the CIA. It doesn't matter if you're in the, ATF. It doesn't matter. Your illusion that you can just go ahead and arbitrarily point out random citizens, and execute any of this shit in real life just arbitrarily. It's, you could have probably potentially got away with that in the 90s whenever you didn't have this access. And like I said, they're trying to control the access of information. They're trying to control the internet, but that's not going to work anymore. It's going to end up leading to the Streisand effect. It's a Pandora's box. You can't stop it. It's just, it just keeps growing and growing. All you can do is try to, sit there and adapt to it. And the left is just, they're incapable of adapting to anything, mainly because they are the same bigots that they claim everybody else is. They're not going to change. They're not going to, be malleable or anything like that and try to work with anybody. They're going to be stuck in that position. So the left is essentially, they're pretty much non-essential as a party right now. And this isn't just me. This is pretty much every, ideology, all the way from, alt-right leaning Republicans, whatever the hell. None of the fucking racists are going to be Republicans. Let's be real. It's just, it's not one of those parties that could ever accumulate any kind of, and sustain any kind of real white nationalists, not like the Democrats were back in the 80s and the 90s. Well, I say 80s and 90s, 60s and 70s, and they still were attached to them in the 80s and 90s for sure. I know firsthand. But they're not going to be able to sustain a white nationalist party like the Democrats were. And so when we look at what's going on, it's impossible for a civil war type scenario. That's not going to happen. It doesn't matter if the Democrats can't sustain a civil war. They can't sustain a civil war. It doesn't matter if they are in charge right now and they have charge, because I heard this on High Impact Flicks. The military will be fighting with the Democrats, and the right will have their gun owners, and I'm sure some vets. That's not the way that it works. All right, that's not how you sustain any kind of civil war and any kind of real time military operation. You'd have to first set up a forward operating base. You would have to, have an enemy first off. You'd have to be able to, engage the enemy. How would that even work? It wouldn't work at all, considering that most of the country is red, anyways, and that a lot of the people are not going to fight on the behalf of any kind of communist. Not, any of the non affiliated people. They're just not going to side with communism. They're not going to fight for state control of shit. So this isn't like the Civil War where it's the Confederates and the Union. No, no, no. This is something completely fucking different. So there's only like 3 scenarios. These are the only 3 scenarios that could possibly play out. And in every scenario, it's bad for the media. All these little propagandists, it doesn't matter, the fucking people that run YouTube right now, that set these guidelines and do the terms of service and affiliate State Department propaganda, it still doesn't work out for y'all too, because y'all are considered low-level media propagandists by the State Department. Y'all are low-level agents. It's what you are. It's the same thing as, the Young Turks or any of the propagandists. You're a liability. So we'll go with the less likely all the way up to the most likely. The least likely scenario is that the communist left, right? These people that are pro government power, pro government taxation, pro government regulations, and that we should pretty much be fucking properties of the government, right? The communists end up taking over the country. They end up overthrowing the government, which, this sad attempt of a proxy named Joe Biden, who, this isn't it. You know what I'm saying? They get in their little, they would have to get a cult of personality, and they'd have to get momentum on their side, which is not likely, particularly with the people that are working in media today. The propagandists are, they're outmatched in every way on the internet. But let's just go ahead for shits and grins, say that they go ahead, take over DC. All these little fucking nerds that drink soy latte, soy milk in the fucking Starbucks and complain about how, oh, we need to pay more and forgive college debt and all this other shit. Yeah, they take up arms. Somehow they manage to take over the government and they end up taking over. Well, guess what? That media, once the communists get in power, media is a liability to them. Their own propagandists are a liability to them because they are the ones that influenced they would have had to influence a majority of people, enough people at least, to get behind their cause. And so they would, once they assume control, well, you have no use. They're not essential anymore. And ultimately, they would be a liability because they would be in on a lot of the shit. You know what I'm saying? They would have some of the information, some of the stuff, so they would have to be eliminated by the communists. This isn't me. I forget, it's Yuri somebody or another. He was he came over here and was talking about how the communists, whenever they try to implement stuff, who their targets are, and the media would be the first target. So the same motherfuckers out there that are trying to sit there and cover and do all this manipulation for the State Department as it pertains to totalitarian communist regime would be the first ones to be targeted. I'm not going to be targeted first. You know what I'm saying? If anything, I would probably be more like recruited into the fucking military or in some sort of upper echelon of any kind of government program, because I have value there, whether it be working in some sort of setting. I would have some value because I was in the military. They know that they could get value from me. Worked in logistics, and I've actually worked and contribute and been a productive member of society. Therefore, I won't say that I wouldn't be targeted at all. Yeah, I'd probably fight against them, but there would be more value out of a person like me than there would be with, like, say, an Anna Kasparian, a Cenk Uygur, any of the Young Turks. You know what I'm saying? Those people right there. But you're not going to get any value out of Rachel Maddow or Joy Reid or any of these. There's no value in them. What are you gonna use them for? And they would be a liability anyways because they would kind of be on the inside. So that's what would happen if there was a communist takeover. If the leftists ended up implementing their ideas and their people in, they would have to be the first ones to be targeted. And uh, they would be made an example out of. They would be the example that would have to be made by the same communists that would ultimately, the same tyrannical communists that would assume control, would use them as an example to everybody else. You better do what we say, or you're going to end up like this bloated fucking journalist here named Brian Stelter. Yeah, you're going to end up just like him. So I mean, it is what it is. Just uh, that would be exactly what would happen in a communist leftist takeover if that were to happen. And then, like I said, everybody would be put in their positions, probably given some sort of aptitude test to a degree to figure out where you would fit into society. Some people would be, work in sweatshops. Some people would work in some sort of distribution or something like that. And, things would be distributed, accordingly, I guess. We see that there's issues in these countries. We see that they don't really take the best care of people. We can already understand what's going on in Canada. This is why I'm not a big fan of socialism or state-run anything. To me, personally, socialism is probably closer to fascism. That the socialists sit there and accuse everybody, you're a fascist. No, I'm a capitalist. And then they blame everything on capitalism. But essentially, their capitalism is nothing more than fascism. So, it's them not understanding. So, I mean, the only way that the communists could ever achieve anything like this would be out of pure, unadulterated ignorance, dumbing down the base, putting these communist viewpoints and ideas in school kids and starting young, because that level of stupidity can't sustain from people who have a degree of success or have contributed to, has had a little bit of success in society, who has made a living for themselves, who hasn't relied on the state. They have to make sure that they get you whenever you're young so they can raise you up to be weak so you can be dependent on them. That's just how communism works. They, keep their people weak. And that's the only way something like that could possibly happen. So here's the second scenario, and this is a little bit more likely. I'm not going to say it's the most likely, but this is a little bit more likely to have what happen if these things keep progressing. So what would happen is you piss off enough Americans, right? You get 2022, let's say, okay, they end up rigging that election, right? And they keep forcing this bullshit on us. Well, ultimately, it would only take about 10% of Trump's base to really come together, start to organize, start to do these movements. It starts as like Tea Party movements or, these don't tread on me little things and stuff like that, the Proud Boys. It starts off as these little organizations. Everybody has a common interest, a common goal, because, these people are getting too, outright. They're starting to go ahead and show aggression, much like the British did. In this case, you're not going to have a civil war. It's not going to be a civil war because it would be hard to sustain any kind of civil war right now with the numbers that just 10% of Trump's base would be 7 million people, which would probably triple the combined what the State Department could throw at anybody. You know what I'm saying? Then, you just look at the vets alone. There's 18 million vets. Well, let's say just even half of those decide that, hey, we're going to go ahead and, join in, that's another 9 million people right there. The anarchists and the constitutionalists and the anti-federalists are going to be more likely to join any kind of populist MAGA movement, just on the principle that the left right now have, assumed control. They don't have control, but they've assumed it. And so, ultimately, they would ultimately come together and go over there and just replace the government by force, replace DC altogether. In this case, in this scenario, what essentially would happen, and I know this to be a fact, everybody will say it's a conspiracy theorist and you're still running with conspiracies from, 10 years ago and none of it's real, but it's absolutely fucking real. They've had a number of trainings. They trained military people in basically detaining U.S. citizens, putting them on buses and transporting them. And the FEMA camps and shit like that. Well, we still had the FEMA camps and shit like that, and you could ultimately still do the transportation. Like for me personally, in this event, I know that a lot of people will immediately jump to capital punishment, straight out execution. A number of people that I know jump immediately to that. We need to execute these people. Me, not so much, just because you're going to execute them, okay? Then what? Then what? To me, that's a reprieve. They should be responsible for fixing all of the shit that they've destroyed. You know what I'm saying? And the best way to do that is to make them indentured servants. That would be my thing. Send them to these little, FEMA camps and shit. Give them a sentence. Forced labor, kind of like what they got Brittany Griner doing right now. It'll keep them idle hands from getting into any more trouble. And so, yeah, that would be, and like I said, that would be my choice. Now, I don't know, because in this event, if there was this big populist MAGA movement, and those in DC decided, oh, well, we're not going to submit, we're going to take over and implement a totalitarian government, and this is a coup, and we're going to take over, and all these people got together and took them out, it wouldn't be up to me, it'd be up to some sort of tribunal, and it just, it'd be whatever the decision, that would be democracy, that would be a majority of the country coming together to go ahead and take out, these people who have assumed control. And ultimately, there would be no telling what the punishment. I would myself would just, think that making these people fix the messes that they caused, taking away all their power, making them live their lives, and this humble way would probably be the best case scenario. And you could use them to go ahead and essentially uh, you know, fix the infrastructures, to go ahead, all the problems that they caused, they should have to, pay for by fixing these right here. And, you don't get the same liberties, you don't get the same freedoms. And like I said, there's so many closed military bases, FEMA camps that are not in use right now. And like I said, as far as like the party as a whole, the left as a whole, you're looking at what, 20 million people at the most? If I was to guesstimate, I think Elon Musk, and this isn't my figure, but Elon Musk said there's about 16 million people, actual active users on Twitter. There's 16 million of the motherfuckers. So it's not that many that's going to support the left. There's not. It's like I said, it's in the 20 millions. It's not that much. It's a very marginalized group, which makes more sense if you're going to sit there and try to say, oh, well, we're going to start putting people in internment camps, like they always try to sit there and say, yeah, we're going to put the right in internment camps. That doesn't make any sense, because nobody trusts the left enough. Nobody's going to back them. You would have to get people on your side to go ahead and execute this nefarious fucking plan. But on the other end, it could very well easily be done with the statists, particularly in the State Department. These people could be contained enough to be sent to these camps and whatnot. and to be, like I said, used as some sort of indentured servants. And that would be my suggestion. Some people probably wouldn't agree with me at all. And I already know the popular consensus amongst my circle, anyways. Some as so much wants to eat the motherfuckers into the sun. So that just shows you how much outrage that they and hate they've gotten onto yourselves. So that would be scenario number two, would be a civil uprising amongst the populace to go ahead and overthrow people that are in these positions, and to go ahead and take them out, and to go ahead and put them into some sort of military tribunal. And it would be a form of lynch mob justice, I guess you could say. But that would be the second scenario. This, the only other possible scenario. This is the last scenario that would be a possibility. And I could see this one being the most likely out of the three. And in this case, what I suspect, at least, for a little while, that doesn't mean that any one of these scenarios could switch in either way with time. You know what I'm saying? Where one side, with that pendulum, I doubt the first scenario is going to be at all likely, but the second scenario, it's potentially, in this scenario, what happens is the State Department steps back, does nothing, lets the Democrats get squashed in 2022. Ultimately, what will end up happening is that they'll have to, of course, you're going to have sacrificial lambs in every scenario. This is why I say it always sucks for the media and the journalists and the propagandists that are in it now, because they haven't gotten enough confidence from the American people to install communism. And ultimately, they've alienated everybody else. And so, there's no way, because they're going to be seen as a liability by one side, they're going to be seen as negligent by the other side. So what we have in this scenario is that the Republicans completely take over. It's a complete landslide in 2022. Immediately in 2023, to appease the masses with this political theater that goes on, you get the same kind of kangaroo courts, you get the same kind of political theater, you get the same kind of justice theater that they put out there. However, in this scenario, it switches. It goes radically from the left, radically to the right. So a lot of these people would have to be put on trial just to appease the growing outrage towards DC. DC's got to fucking somehow sustain some more, they've got to accumulate more confidence in DC and in the government right now. Government confidence is at an all-time low, particularly whenever you look at inflation, whenever you look at gas prices, and the government can't honestly claim ignorance on this. As many people here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, a number of which are fucking deleted, but those archives that exist out there somewhere. Somebody has those archives. And this isn't just from me, this is from various other people like Fabian for Liberty and Stick, Sex, and Hammer, and various other people who have dropped videos, ultimately, chronicling where we're at right now, and calling out exactly where we're at right now. So I meant, you can't claim ignorance at this point. There's only other one. If you're not claiming ignorance, then it's neglect. It's intentional. So that pendulum swings radically right. Well, you're gonna have to get some. You're gonna have to get some of this political. You're gonna have to start doing indictments on everybody that was involved in this little coup, and that have been running these operations. So I meant, whenever the thing about this is that we know exactly what's going to happen if they do the indictments. At most, they'll send them to, what is it, Guantanamo or somewhere like that, or they're going to incarcerate them, or they're going to do something with them, and you're never going to hear from them again. Or probably some form of exile. That's what they'll do, because I guarantee you, what's going to end up happening is whenever the Republicans get into office in 2023, they're going to immediately impeach Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and then whoever, which is going to be a Republican, whoever is Speaker of the House, will assume that. Yeah, you'll get some outrage, a little bit, from the left, but I guarantee you, if you take out the media platforms, if the media platforms are under investigation and are incriminated and told not to talk about these things because they're under investigation as well, and if you take out the media platform, ultimately, there's not going to be that much outrage for the left. There's just not enough of them to cause that outrage. The only time that you get this outrage is whenever people start echoing these propagandist sites and shit. So, I mean, that outrage would go way, way down. And ultimately, these people would be investigated. They'd have to be tried and more than likely exiled. And I think that what the Republicans would like to do, and this is the State Department, this is the State Department as a whole, what they would probably rather have do is, instead of running the whole 2020 MAGA thing, which is a possibility, it could still happen. The Make America Great Donald Trump movement, which I think is gonna essentially, it's gonna end up becoming a theocracy anyways. The pendulum is gonna eventually end up hitting that far right, where it's gonna be, the law of the land is gonna be more of a religious institute rather than it being a church and state institute. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, because the left has went radically amoralistic on every fucking thing, making everything so fucking anthropic that, people are going to want a little bit more stability. Guess what? They're going to find it in faith. They're going to find it in religion. They're going to find it in spirituality. And that's whenever you get people out there like Joel Osteen and fucking Kenneth Copeland and all these other people will probably get more of the same kind of following as, like, say, your Kim Kardashians and Alyssa Milano's and Sarah Silverman's. You're going to find more people start to migrate to that message than you will to the leftist message. Just what happens whenever these people on the left have alienated everybody so much, they gradually shift to the right. So that's going to eventually happen regardless of this scenario. But I do think that for the State Department, however, they would probably rather kind of get somebody in there like a Mitt Romney. And the reason why I say Mitt Romney is because I think that they wanted Mitt Romney in there in 2012. It wasn't going to happen because they still had Obama passing all these policies. They really, really, really like Romney because Romney's kind of similar to Obama in a lot of ways. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. This would be the Republican Obama would get put back in as a Republican. The thing is that you can hold Republicans a little bit more accountable than you can at Democrats. But that's not always going to be the case, particularly if the country keeps on migrating to this direction. And the left has just made a complete mockery and embarrassment of themselves. So now they can't even, nobody's going to take everything that they do, every victory that they get is going to be heavily criticized and heavily scrutinized. And that's just the way it is. You've killed your own reputation. There's nothing I could do for you. There are fucking people on YouTube that are fucking running over there in the State Departments with their little pussy hats on, saying we need to censor him. Oh my God, he's making contact that goes against my beliefs, and he's a racist, bigoted, and homophobe, and all this other shit that you try to attribute to fucking censor people on the internet. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's not. This is all on you. This is all on you being extremist. This is all on you being fucking rambunctious and, a cathartic and reacting immediately whenever you should have been fixing your own side. You just blame everything on everybody else. This isn't going to get anybody to invest in you whatsoever. People are just going to be like, well, I'm not going to fucking contribute anything to you. I'm not going to fucking let you. And so it's all based, it's all on you. It's all on you. So this is the direction I see the country going. I do think it's going to go radically right. Either way it goes, it's already there pretty much. We can tell this by the primaries and the number of turnouts that they had, particularly for the MAGA. So there's already a cult of personality. Trump is a cult of personality, regardless if he becomes president again or not. He's just that cult of personality that the populists are going to get behind. Um, Ron DeSantis is also he's kind of like riding on the coattails of that. He if Donald Trump is like the Fidel Castro for the Republicans, then Ron DeSantis is like the Che Guevara and stuff. So they already have entrenched this whole cult of personality, and there's really nothing that the left can do at the moment. You know what I'm saying? And these are the only three possibilities that I could see playing out, potentially. It's not going to be a civil war type scenario. It's not going to be Republicans versus Democrats. That doesn't make any sense. Especially whenever you understand that, there are most of the country is independents. And so if it was Republican ideology versus the Trotskys versus the fucking Leninists and shit, that's not gonna be how it's gonna play out. Um, me myself, I'm a fucking anti-federalist, so I don't care for either opinion on communism. All communism, statism is, highly fucking overrated. It needs to go back to the states. Government needs to be at a place where people can more conveniently control these institutions and whatnot. And whenever you look at the FBI and the ATF and these various agencies being able to go ahead and violate the same laws that they're supposed to go ahead and help enforce, well, everybody's going to be like, well, it's rules for thee, but not for me, stuff like that. It just doesn't work. It's not going to work, especially on the society as a whole. So these are the three scenarios I see playing out. You'll hear people talk about civil war. You'll hear people talk about how, oh, this is, Trump is this and he's targeted. It's all political theater, regardless. Trump is, what did Trump do? Whenever he tried to push red flag laws, he fucking he did the Operation Warp Speed, started the mandates, started all of this shit. He started a lot of the shit, and he never repealed any of the propaganda bills, never repealed any of the counter propaganda bills that ended up censoring the internet, and so yeah. So I mean, to me, it's neither here nor there. It's not that it's about Trump. It's about the abuse and them trying to send a statement, trying to set a precedent, and I think it's just kind of fucking stupid at the end of the day. Ron DeSantis is favorite Republican governor. Yeah, that's cool, Scott. Yeah, I get it. You're a Ron DeSantis guy. But anyways, I'm just gonna wrap this video up. I just wanted to go ahead and put something up for posterity purposes, explaining the only possible outcomes if the State Department keeps progressing this shit. These are going to be this is going to be the only possible outcomes in any scenario as it pertains to any kind of direction that this country is going. And it all works out bad for the media. The media is in a no-win, no-win, no-win situation. It doesn't matter who takes over. They're screwed. Like your Rachel Maddows and stuff like that, maybe in the last scenario, they'd be okay. If the fucking if we go completely to the right and become that kind of, but like I said, to me that's really not much better than being radically to the left. It's still fucking state of shit. We need a more anti-federalist system, and we need less government control, less taxes, and I think that the actual sentiment of the country is for that. The actual country is for less government control, or the complete abolishment of income taxes, the less globalism, but they're not going to let that happen, and they can't ultimately. But I do think that they're going to end up eventually. It's going to become a theocracy, and it was told in Revelations anyways. So it seems to be working out and going into that course as it is stated in Revelations. And they're going to start to head in that direction. You know, we can tell right now that technically there's a bunch of theocrats already in. You know, they pretty much control the fucking country, anyways. When you look at Joe Biden being Catholic, whenever you look at Nancy Pelosi being Catholic, fucking Kamala Harris has had Catholic education, Justin Trudeau's a Catholic, Donald Trump is a fucking Jesuit, and you have 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are all Catholic. So there's heavily fucking theocratic, you know, implementation already in our government. So to say that we're going to end up heading into a theocratic direction, it isn't a stretch, as the fucking leftists will sit there and pretend it is. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted this video up here for posterity purposes. Just wanted to go and drop it, say, hey, look, it doesn't work out for the media regardless. Um, and these are the 3 scenarios. These are the only 3 possible scenarios that could play out right now. So we'll just have to sit back and see how it turns out. Anyways, y'all people like, sub, do the shit YouTube, Twitter, Facebook tell me to do to get over. And for now, I'm out.